Welcome back. Now, just after the turn of the year, women leaders from either side of the political divide united. They met in solidarity to show their support for the handshake between President Uhuru Kenyatta and former Prime Minister Raila Odinga. They surrendered T-shirts and caps branded "Resist" and Jubilee embroidered berets and donned pink sun visors with the word "Embrace." It's a new platform women leaders seek to use to reach the female electorate and give voice to the issues that matter to them. Joining me to shed light on what this initiative seeks to achieve is Honorable Rachel Shebesh, the Chief Administrative Secretary from the Ministry of Public Service, Youth and Gender Affairs, and Honorable Gladys Wanga, Homa Bay Woman Representative. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you.
Let me begin with you, Honorable Shebesh, just to explain more on what Embrace Initiative is all about.
Thank you. You've just said it rightly, by the way, that when the handshake happened between the President and the former Prime Minister, there was calm in this country. There was a sigh of relief, but there was also the shock that these two leaders could put aside their political differences and see Kenya first. And so immediately, as women, the political space where I no longer am, but Gladys Wanga is, thought that it was important to follow what the Building Bridges initiative talked about, that this handshake cannot remain at the top. Every leader must take responsibility and take it to the ground. So within their caucuses of political leadership, they did approach the ministry, and the Cabinet Secretary and I sat, gave them a hearing, and felt that they had a good idea, because we believe in the women's movement, that the peace of this country will be driven by women. The development of this country is driven by women. And so we thought as a ministry, why not listen to the idea of how to not only support the Building Bridges initiative, but their idea of embracing not only the political leadership of women, but cascading it to every other level of women, whether they're in academia, whether they're in business, women in churches, spiritual leaders who are always forgotten, and especially the women at the grassroots. So as a ministry, we thought it was important that we give them the support needed. And so the Cabinet Secretary did allow us to use my office to coordinate their work for them. But basically, the ministry is also the home, as the Ministry of Gender. It is the home of all the aspirations of women. And if this is one of the aspirations of the political leadership of this country, women who are respected, because the governors were there, the senators were there, women MPs, up to women MCAs, up to leadership of Maendeleo Wanawake, if they can come and sit down and tell us they want to do something, it is our responsibility as a ministry to make it happen.
So every level of government, every sector literally is being touched by this initiative.
Yes.
Let's talk about politics, Honorable Wanga, because every 5 years, we go through a very tumultuous period, election year. It becomes a high-stakes game, if you will. What does the input of women mean in terms of changing how we do politics, changing the culture of this country?
Yeah, and Victoria, you're right. Every 5 years since we started, multi-party politics, 1992, and all the way to 2017, it is when 5 years are approaching, people are afraid. People even begin to move from where they are. And when we reflected on this, you realize that the people who suffer the most in the event of political violence, when it happens, is the women and the children. And of course our young people. And so those are children to these mothers. So the people who are most affected are the women. And that is why the move by His Excellency, the President, His Excellency Raila Amolo Odinga, to shake hands after this election and to say and to ask themselves as key leaders in this country, where did the rain start beating us? What ails us as a nation? Can we turn back the hands of time? Can we make every 5 years time to celebrate and time to even scale greater heights rather than time to wail and mourn and shed blood? That they stood on the steps of Harambee House and said, there's going to be no more bloodshed, and identified what issues there were. Because if you look at the memorandum that they came up with, they identified 9 key issues that we identify with and that we embrace, such as, why is there ethnic antagonism? Why do I feel you know, a Coast person is less a person than a Luo like myself, or a Kikuyu is bad and a Kalenjin is good. And why do we feel this way? That is a question they raised. The issue of lack of national ethos. Why don't we embrace our national values? The issues of corruption. What can we do, you know, to deal with corruption in this country? They looked at, you know, divisive elections. That was a key issue there. Shared prosperity. How is it that some people are so well-to-do and that other people languish so much? Rights and responsibilities. What are our rights? But how do we embrace our rights and also take care of our responsibilities? How do we make devolution better? How do we make it work for the people for which it is supposed to work? That 9-point agenda, our safety and security, these are issues they identified, and this is why we said, as Embrace, we also want to see what is the role of women in some of these issues. What is our voice in them? So we congratulate them for this very bold step. But they said on the steps of Harambee House that we want every Kenyan, every leader to now also do their part. This is what women leaders from across the political divide, across ethnic lines, across religious lines, women in every sector, including women in the media. This is where we want to embrace each other and take this handshake, devolve it, diffuse it, explain it, let our people embrace each other and not say that this was Raila and Uhuru on the steps of Harambee House. It is for all Kenyans, it is for all of us, and as women, we are willing to play our part in making sure that we protect the handshake. Not just now, for now and beyond. See, some people say it's about 2022. We don't see it that way. We feel 2022 should be different because there was a handshake. And beyond 2022, the generations to come will never have to deal with the issues that we have been dealing with. So this is how serious we take this handshake. So we want to protect it and support it and hail it.
And you know, the timing of all of this, people would be questioning, why couldn't women, of course we've had plenty of women's movements in the past. They have not been as effective. This is probably the biggest in terms of scale that we're seeing women coming together from various sectors, various levels of society. But why did it take this long? Why is it happening now? People could question, is it because Raila and Uhuru came together at the top and all of a sudden we realized and woke up and thought we need to come together? Couldn't this have happened before?
Of course it could have. But you always have to put yourself in a situation of what was the current prevailing situation. Let me just tell you, Victoria, we, Gladys and I, and other women in leadership, are enjoying the fruits of women who came before us. Women who created space where there was absolutely no space. And today, I say my success is due to mentorship from women who came before us. What they did, we are doing much less. But the reason for this handshake is the reason that killed initiatives of women. We became so polarized in our political parties, in our ethnic cocoons, that we could not see the bigger picture and lost the value that was started by what we call our trailblazers. So I always say, God's timing is the right time. This Embrace movement, from the way it is captured to what you will see unfolding, will reignite the voice of women in this country to the point where it was and beyond. And so we are saying, if they could do it, we must. So first of all is to accept that we did allow ourselves to go into spaces where women should never have gone. I mean, we were called brigade. It's a military term and we're wearing berets. They were called resist. Also, a movement that is a war cry. For heaven's sake, why would we reach there as women? It's because, as I said, for the president and the former prime minister to decide this country is going to the dogs, even women, instead of bringing peace, are the ones instigating just for an election and a political process. So we are saying we are in these positions because we have been elected or we've been appointed. We must now take our position seriously. We will be in the same space with the women who came before us. In the pre-convention that is happening on Tuesday, you will see that we have brought women to give us where we came from, in case there are others who don't know that story. But we will also be putting this mind together and then eventually taking it to the grassroots so that we do a bit better. A bit better meaning that we set up a system and a policy and a movement and even legislation that will never allow the space of women to be taken away. And let me tell you, because of that divisiveness, we slowed down on what the gains of the women would have been by now. However, we are happy that the Constitution, during the process of Constitution making, we had strong voices of women at that time who ensured that we had great gains in this Constitution. So our work is to make sure that anything that we gained over the years, either through our work or those came for us, is never lost. But that we built onto it. So yes, it could have happened earlier. But anyway, it's happening now does not mean that there was never a movement. It's only that we became too myopic in our thinking in this country, not only women. The political space always took us back rather than forward.
And speaking of how the political space kind of drives a lot that happens here in Kenya, of course, this stems from the Building Bridges initiative, which many feel is a precursor for the referendum. It's just revolving around this whole idea of changing the constitution to serve the interests of a few when it comes to 2022. But what do you say to that thought process and people who criticize this as simply a publicity stunt, only to serve the interests of Uhuru and Raila moving forward, and not really to see a lot of these ideals entrenched in society when it comes to inclusion, when it comes to embracing your brother and sister from a different tribe or a different ethnic group?
Well, I've had voices saying, okay, BBI is about creating space for politicians. But just the other day, I saw a research that has been done by the National Democratic Institute looking at what are the perspectives of Kenyans with regard to the Building Bridges initiatives. And you could see that Kenyans are happy when they are together. They're happy when they are united. They're happy when there is peace. They're happy when there is unity. And that is why we were rated the most optimistic country after the 2002 general elections, because the country sort of came together in such a big way. And that is why generally there's been quiet and calm after the handshake. So what I'd like to say is I do not see a creation of space for the sake of creating it. But we must, all of us as Kenyans, and that is why the Building Bridges initiative is going around the country. And they have identified the issues. So the first thing they're asking, do you feel these issues are a problem? Do you feel there is exclusivity? Do you feel that we are having divisive elections every 5 years? Do you feel that we are so divided as a country? Do you feel corruption is a problem? Then they ask, yes, we agree with that. Then they ask, how do you think we can resolve these problems so that we are united as a country? The one way, for sure, the one thing we must do, because what governs us is our constitution. So if we feel there are problems in some places, and even when we were passing this constitution, Victoria, in 2010, we said 80% is good, but the 20% that is not very good, let's come back and deal with it. Right. And we've done a socioeconomic audit of the constitution, and we have said it has become too lean, it has become too small, too exclusive, and it is Kenyans themselves that will say what they want. Right. And that is why the constitution itself says, for you to change it, especially like the structure of government, you have to go back to the people. So the people should not feel that like they're being led on a path that they do not want, because the final decision lies with them.
So what happens if we do go for a referendum, but some of those issues are not addressed fully? And we're finding that we're dealing with these same problems for which we went to this referendum for. Are there alternatives to deal with this?
Victoria, let me tell you. There's something called attitude. There's something called perception that drives the way people think. Today, if I want to convince you, for example, that speaking about education is important, I must give you the reasons. I must make you see why I think what I would like to see is important. There is no way we will change perceptions of Kenyans overnight. because we've taken years and years to entrench some norms, including, apart from political space, including that women are not supposed to be in these big positions. That when we get 3 women governors elected, we are celebrating as if it is a gift, yet it's a right. And those women leaders, governors, are not elected because they are women, it's because they have leadership. So the only space that we're engaging in now, so that this initiative is not an initiative that, as you're saying, is for a season and it ends. The reason why we are taking time in this Embrace movement, together with the Embrace movement and the ministry, to set out a timeline and a formula is because we know that it can easily be about one event rather than changing the mindset. And it's not easy. First, I can tell you, it's not easy. But I want you to watch what the president has been doing, for example. And I think people are wondering, the president is going a bit too far. Everywhere he's talking because unless he says it, everywhere he is, people will not believe that it is genuine. So every opportunity he's using to say, listen, let's get this country together. Together, there will be prosperity. Let's do development. Let's make sure that every corner of this country is treated equally. The same thing that Embrace wants to do. Embrace wants to say that in the space of the Building Bridges initiative, we have an opportunity to change the mindset and even the way programs, even of government, are planned, because we have talked to the women on the ground. Yes. It is used sometimes in the women's movement, people won't find the women's movement, to say that we are elitist and we don't know what the woman in the grassroots is saying. Those people talk in town, but the woman at the grassroots is saying something different. This is the difference. That all we are doing is forming a structure to give the woman in the village a voice in this BBI, which will go beyond BBI and which will set a new tone for this country.
And just as we wrap up, Honorable Wanga, in terms of how effective this will be, many Kenyans asking, there have been efforts, the Dungu report, TGRC report, Kriegler report, in the past that have sought to deal with many of these issues that BBI wants to deal with. Is there an effort to use the information from those reports, those efforts, those commissions to help bolster what BBI is doing? Or we forgotten totally what they tried to do in terms of rectifying and remedying a lot of the issues we face as Kenyans?
I think the first thing that BBI has to do is to do a desk review. What has been said in the past about the issues we are talking about. If they go to Samburu and people say there are serious land issues here, what is bothering us is, land succession and so on, then they say, what is it that has been there in the past? What have we said in the past? What is the new knowledge that we are bringing in? And as Embrace, we are also building up from, and as Honorable Shebesh said, from what the women who went before us, the things that they did, what they did. And Victoria, if as the women of this country, we fail to recognize that the March 9th handshake was not just a historic moment for this country, it was also a constitutional moment. So if you sit back and say, oh, nothing's going to happen, let's just sit and wait and see what BBI comes up with, people have to mobilize. And it's not, this country, women have mobilized before. But even if you look at South Africa, when they were about to do their new constitution, when they were about to do their constitution in 1992, women formed a women's caucus, a major women's movement that people knew. The women's caucus has to be called, they have to say what the women want, and that is how they secured the gains that they did. They have a mixed member, proportional representation system where a party list is given. South Africa has 42%. They're number 3 in Africa after Rwanda and Seychelles. They're number 3 in women's representation because of that kind of strong movement. And this is what we want to emulate as Embrace. We are saying our voice is not going to go in fragmented. It is not going to go in silos. It's not going to go in small bits and pieces. We want to put it together. We want to speak as one voice, and that is why on Tuesday, 5th, we are beginning the process, and we'll be having a pre-convention that brings in women leaders, you know, women in all sectors, women in the judiciary, in the private sector, in CSOs. And I want to thank civil society organizations that have come in, you know, Deliver for Good, you know, DFID and others, and NDI, who've come in to say, we want to support the women to go to where, you know, to have their voices heard. So we want to just tell women out there, you know, really, let's pull together so that our voices do not go in as fragmented. Because if women in the media say, we want to present our own memorandum, and then women in parliament say, as the Kenya Women Parliamentary Association, we want to present our own memorandum. Women in trade unions say, we want to present our own. You know, it will be segmented. Too small, too fragmented to be heard. So we want to bring this together under Embrace. And Embrace is just Embrace. It's for all of us. It's just about embracing your neighbor. It's not for, it doesn't belong to anybody. It belongs to every single woman's voice that will go all the way down. So we hope that what has happened in the past will inform our future.
All right, Honorable Shebesh, Honorable Wanga, thank you so much for your time. And let's see if that collective power of women actually makes a difference in 2022 and beyond.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And that does it for Citizen Weekend. Thanks for watching. See you again tomorrow on Sunday Live. Good night.